Chapter 5. The blue-black shine that had so nicely encircled TJ's left eye for over a week had almost completely faded by the morning TJ hopped into the back of the wagon beside Stacy and snuggled in a corner not occupied by the butter, milk, and eggs Big Ma was taken to sell at the market in Strawberry. I sat up front beside Big Ma, still sandy-eyed, and not believing that I was actually going. The second Saturday of every month was market day in Strawberry, and for as far back as I could remember, the boys and I had been begging Big Ma to take us to it. Stacy had actually gone once, but Christopher John Littleman and I had always been flatly denied the experience. We had, in fact, been denied so often that our pestering now occurred more out of habit than of any real belief that we'd be able to go. But this morning, while the world lay black, Big Ma called, "Cassie, get up, child. If you're going to go to town with me, and be quiet about it. You wake up Christopher John or Little Man, and I'll leave you here. I don't want them crying all over the place because they can't go." As Jack swept the wagon into the gray road, Big Ma pulled tightly on the reins and grumbled, "Hold on, you, Jack. Hold on. I ain't got no time to be putting up with both you and TJ's foolishness." "TJ!" Stacy and I exclaimed together. "He going?" Big Ma didn't answer immediately. She was occupied in a test of wills with Jack. When hers had prevailed and Jack had settled into a moderate trot, she replied moodily, "Mr. Avery come by after y'all was asleep last night wanting TJ to go to Strawberry to do some shopping for a few things he couldn't get at the Wallace store. Lord, that's all I need with all this trouble about, is for that child to talk me to death for 22 minutes. Miles, 22 miles in a horse and carriage. So they spend a lot of time on the road." Big Ma didn't need to say any more, and she didn't. TJ was far from her favorite person, and it was quite obvious that Stacy and I owed our good fortune entirely to TJ's obnoxious personality. So this is an example of when the author tells you something about someone to help you get a picture of the kind of character or person that character is. So in this case, she's referring to TJ as obnoxious. And we already know this by his actions. TJ, however, was surprisingly subdued when we settled into the wagon. I suppose that at 3:30 in the morning, even TJ's mouth was tired. But by dawn, when the December sun was creeping wearily upward, shooting pale streams of bluff-covered light through the forest, he was fully awake and chattering like a cockatoo. His endless talk made me wish that he had not managed to wheedle his way so speedily back into Stacy's good graces. But Big Ma, her face furrowed in distant thoughts, did not hush him. He talked the rest of the way into Strawberry, announcing as we arrived, "Well, children, open your eyes and take in Strawberry, Mississippi." "Is this it?" I cried, a gutting disappointment enveloping me as we entered the town. Strawberry was nothing like the tough, sprawling bigness I had envisioned. It was instead a sad, red place. As far as I could see, the only things modern about it were a paved road which cut through its center and fled northward away from it, and a spindly row of electrical lines. Lining the road were strips of red dirt splotched with patches of brown grass and drying mud puddles, and beyond the dirt and mud puddles, gloomy store buildings set behind raised wooden sidewalks and sagging verandas. So once again, Mildred D. Taylor is painting a picture, using imagery to help paint a picture of the setting for us so that we can picture the time period. "Shoot," I grumbled. "It sure ain't nothing to shout about." "Hush up, Cassie," Big Ma said. "You too, TJ. Y'all are in town now, and I expects y'all to act like it. In another hour, this place'll be teeming up with folks from all over the county, and I don't want no trouble." As the stores gave way to houses still sleeping, we turned onto a dirt road which led past more shops and beyond to a wide field dotted with wooden stalls. Near the field entrance, several farm wagons and pickups were already parked, but Big Ma drove to the other side of the field where only 2 wagons were stationed. Climbing from the wagon, she said, "Don't seem like too many folks are ahead of us. In the summer, I'd have had to come on a Friday and spend the night to get a spot like this." She headed toward the back of the wagon. "Stacy, you and TJ stay up there a minute and push them milk cans over here so as I can reach them." "Big Ma," I said, following her, "all them folks up there selling milk and eggs too?" "Not all, I reckon. Some of 'em got meats and vegetables, quilts and sewing and such, but I guess a good piece of 'em sellin' the same as us." I studied the wagons parked at the field entrance, then exclaimed, "Well, what the devil we doing way back here then? Can't nobody see us?" "You watch your mouth, girl," warned Big Ma. Then, arranging the milk cans and baskets of eggs near the wagon's edge, she softened her voice and promised, "We'll do all right. I got me some regular customers, and they'll come check to see if I'm here before they buy." "Not way back here, they won't," I grumbled. Maybe Big Ma knew what she was doing, but it made absolutely no sense to me to be so far from the entrance. Most of the other farmers seemed to have the right idea, and I couldn't help but try to make her see the business sense of moving the wagon forward. "Why don't we move our wagon up there with them other wagons, Big Ma? There's plenty of room, and we could sell more." "Them's white folks' wagons, Cassie," Big Ma said gruffly, as if that explained everything. "Now hush up and help me get this food out." "Shoot," I mumbled, taking one of the buckets from Stacy. "By the time a body walk way back here, they'll have bunions on their soles and corns on their toes." By noon, the crowd, which had covered the field during the early morning, had thinned noticeably, and wagons and trucks began to pack up and head for town. After we'd eaten our cold lunch of oil sausages and cornbread washed down with clabber milk, we did the same. On the main street of Strawberry once more, Big Ma parked the wagon in front of a building where 4 shingles hung from a rusted post. One of the shingles read, "Wade W. Jameson, Attorney at Law." "Mr. Jameson live here?" I cried, scrambling down. "I want to see him." "He don't live here," said Big Ma, opening her large purse. She pulled out a long manila envelope, checked inside, and then gingerly put it back again. "This here's his office, and I've got some business with him. You get on back in the wagon." Big Ma climbed down, but I didn't get back in. "Can't I just go up and say, hey?" I persisted. "I'm going to hey you," Big Ma said. "You keep pestering me." She glanced over at Stacy and TJ. "Y'all wait here for me, and soon as I get back, we'll go to do that shopping so as we can get home before it gets too dark." When she'd gone inside, TJ said, "What you want with that white man anyway, Cassie? What you and him got to talk about?" "I just want to see him, that's all," I said. I liked Mr. Jameson. I didn't mind admitting it. He came to see us several times a year, mainly on business, and although the boys and I were somewhat shy of him, we were always glad to see him. He was the only white man I ever heard address Mama and Big Ma's missus, and I liked him for it. Besides that, in his way, he was like Papa. Ask him a question and he'd give it to you straight. I liked that. After several minutes of watching farmers in faded overalls and their women in flower sack-cut dresses promenading under the verandas, TJ said, "Why don't we go on down to the mercantile and look around?" Stacy hesitated. "I don't know. I think Big Ma wanted to go with us." "Oh, shoot, man, we'll be doing her a favor. We go on down to the mercantile now and order up that stuff. We'll save her time, so when she come back from seeing that lawyer, we can just go on home. Besides, I got something to show you." Stacy pondered the suggestion for a long moment. "Well, I guess it'd be all right," he said finally. "Big Ma said to stay here," I objected. "Stay here," he said. I dashed after them. I wasn't about to stay on that sidewalk by myself. The Barnett Mercantile had everything. Its shelves, counters, and floor space boasted items from ladies' ribbons to burlap bags of seeds, from babies' bottles to brand new pot-bellied stoves. TJ, who'd been to the store several times before, wove his way among the farmers that led us to a counter at the far corner of the room. The counter had a glass top, and beneath the glass were handguns, artfully displayed on a bolt of red velvet. "Just look at that," TJ said dreamily. "Ain't she something?" "What?" I said. "That pearl-handled one. Stacy, man, you ever seen a gun like that before in your whole life? I'd sell my life for that gun. One of these days I'm going to have it too." So this right here, this is called foreshadowing. I'll mention foreshadowing here and there as we read, through some of these novels. Foreshadowing is when the author kind of gives hints as to things that may come. And, with talking about a gun that TJ says he is going to someday have, and we know what type of person TJ is, or we get a feel for the type of person he is, it makes you wonder if something bad will happen that has to do with a gun. "I reckon I ain't," said Stacy politely. "It's a nice looking gun, all right." I stared down at the gun. A price tag of $35.95 stared back at me. $35.95! I almost screamed. "Just for an old gun? What the devil you gonna use it for? You can't hunt with it." TJ looked at me with disgust. "Ain't supposed to hunt with it. It's for protection." "Protection from what?" I asked, thinking of Papa's sturdy shotgun that hung over his and Mama's bed, and the sleek Winchester rifle which Big Ma kept locked in the trunk beneath our own bed. "That thing couldn't hardly kill a rattlesnake." "There's other things a body needs protecting from more than a rattlesnake," he said haughtily. "I get me that gun, ain't nobody gonna mess with me. I wouldn't need nobody." Stacy backed away from the counter. He seemed nervous being in the store. "We better get those things you need and get on out of here before Big Ma comes looking for us." "Oh, man, there's plenty of time," said TJ, looking longingly at the gun. "Sure wish I could just hold it. Just once." "Come on, TJ," ordered Stacy, "or me and Cassie's going on back outside." "Oh, all right." TJ turned reluctantly away and went to the counter where a man was measuring nails onto a scale. We stood patiently waiting behind the people in front of us, and when our turn came, TJ handed the list to the man. "Mr. Barnett, sir," he said, "I got me this list of things my mama want." The storekeeper studied the list and, without looking up, asked, "You one of Mr. Grange's people?" "Yes, sir," answered TJ. Mr. Barnett walked to another counter and began filling the order. But before he finished, a white woman called, "Mr. Barnett, you waiting on anybody just now?" Mr. Barnett turned around. "Just them," he said, indicating us with a wave of his hand. "What can I do for you, Miss Emmeline?" The woman handed him a list twice as long as TJ's, and the storekeeper, without a word of apology to us, proceeded to fill it. "What's he doing?" I objected. "Hush, Cassie," said Stacy, looking very embarrassed and uncomfortable. TJ's face was totally bland, as if nothing at all had happened. When the woman's order was finally filled, Mr. Barnett again picked up TJ's list. But before he had gotten the next item, his wife called, "Jim Lee, these folks needing help over here, and I got my hands full." And as if we were not even there, he walked away. "Where's he going?" I cried. "He'll be back," said TJ, wandering away. After waiting several minutes for Mr. Barnett to return, Stacy said, "Come on, Cassie, let's go." He started toward the door, and I followed. But as we passed one of the counters, I spied Mr. Barnett wrapping an order of pork chops for a white girl. Adults was one thing. I could almost understand that. They ruled things, and there wasn't anything that could be done about them. But some kid who was no bigger than me was something else altogether. Certainly, Mr. Barnett had forgotten about TJ's order. I decided to remind him. And without saying anything to Stacy, I turned around and marched over to Mr. Barnett. Excuse me, Mr. Barnett, I said, as politely as I could, waiting a moment for him to look up from his wrapping. I think you forgot, but you was waiting on us for you's waiting on this girl here, and we've been waiting a good while now for you to get back. The girl gazed at me strangely, but Mr. Barnett did not look up. I assumed he hadn't heard me. I was near the end of the counter, so I merely went over to the other side of it and tugged on his shirt sleeve to get his attention. He recoiled as if I'd struck him. You was helping us, I said, back into the front of the counter again. Will you just get your little black self over there and wait some more? He said in a low, tight voice. I was hot. I had been as nice as I could to him, and here he was talking like this. We've been waiting on you for near an hour, I hissed, while you round here waiting on everybody else, and it ain't fair. You got no right. Whose little N-word is this? Bellowed Mr. Barnett. Everyone in the store turned and stared at me. I ain't nobody's little N-word, I screamed, angry and humiliated, and you ought not be waiting on everybody for you waiting on us. Hush up, child. Hush up, someone whispered behind me. I looked around. A woman who had occupied the wagon next to ours at the market looked down upon me. Mr. Barnett, his face red and eyes bulging, immediately pounced on her. This gal yours, Hazel? No, sir, answered the woman meekly, stepping hastily away to show she had nothing to do with me. As I watched her turn her back on me, Stacy emerged and took my hand. Come on, Cassie, let's get out of here. Stacy, I exclaimed, relieved to see him by my side. Tell him, you know he ain't fair making us wait. She your sister, boy? Mr. Barnett spat across the counter. Stacy bit his lower lip and gazed into Mr. Barnett's eyes. Yes, sir. Then you get her out of here, he said with hateful force, and make sure she don't come back till your mammy teach her what she is. I already know what I am, I retaliated, but I bet you don't know what you are, and I can sure tell you too, you old... Stacy jerked me forward, crushing my hand in the effort, and whispered angrily, Shut up, Cassie. His dark eyes flashed malevolently, and he pushed me out in front of him through the crowd. As soon as we were outside, I whipped my hands from his. What's the matter with you? You know he was wrong. Stacy swallowed to flush his anger. I know it, and you know it, but he don't know it, and that's where the trouble is. Now, come on before you get us into a real mess. I'm going up to Mr. Jameson's to see what's keeping Big Ma. What about TJ? I called after he stepped into the street. Stacy laughed wryly. Don't worry about TJ. He knows how to act. He crossed the street sullenly then, his hands jammed into his pockets. I watched him go but didn't follow. Instead, I ambled along the sidewalk, trying to understand why Mr. Barnett had acted the way he had. More than once, I stopped and gazed over my shoulder at the mercantile. I had a good mind to go in and find out what made Mr. Barnett so mad. I actually turned once and headed toward the store, but then I remembered what Mr. Barnett had said about my returning. So I swung back around, kicking at the sidewalk, my head bowed. It was then that I bumped into Lillian Jean Sims. Why don't you watch where you're going? She asked huffily. Jeremy and her two younger brothers were with her. Hey, Cassie, said Jeremy. Hey, Jeremy, I said solemnly, keeping my eyes on Lillian Jean. Well, apologize, she ordered. What? You bumped into me. Now you apologize. I did not feel like messing with Lillian Jean. I had other things on my mind. Okay, I said, starting past. I'm sorry. Miss Lillian Jean sidestepped in front of me. That ain't enough. Get in the road. I looked at her. You crazy? You can't watch where you're going. Get in the road. Maybe that way you won't be bumping into decent white folks with your nasty little self. This second of the day was almost more than I could bear. Only the thought of Big Ma up at Mr. Jameson's office saved Lillian Jean's lip. I ain't nasty, I said, properly holding my temper in check, and if you're so afraid of getting bumped, you walk down there yourself. I started past her again, and again she got in my way. Oh, let her pass, Lillian Jean, said Jeremy. She ain't done nothing to you. She done something to me just by standing in front of me. With that, she reached for my arm and attempted to push me off the sidewalk. I braced myself and swept my arm backward out of Lillian Jean's reach, but someone caught it from behind, painfully twisted it, and shoved me off the sidewalk into the road. I landed bottom first on the ground. Mr. Sims glared down at me. When my gal, Lillian Jean, says for you to get yourself off the sidewalk, you get, you hear? Behind him were his sons, R.W. and Melvin. I stared up at Mr. Sims, frightened. Jeremy appeared frightened too. I apologize already. Jeremy seemed relieved. She did, Pa. Right before you come, she did. Mr. Sims turned an angry gaze upon his son, and Jeremy faltered, looked at me, and hung his head. Then Mr. Sims jumped into the street. I moved away from him, trying to get up. He was mean-looking, all red in the face and bearded. I was afraid he was going to hit me before I could get to my feet. I scrambled up and ran blindly for the wagon. Someone grabbed me and I fought wildly. Stop it, Cassie, Big Ma said. Stop it, it's me. We're going home now. Not for she apologizes to my gal, y'all ain't, said Mr. Sims. Big Ma gazed down at me, fear in her eyes, then back at the growing crowd. She's just a child. Tell her. Go on, child. Apologize. Big Ma spoke. But Big Ma, her voice hardened. Do like I say. I swallowed hard. Go on. I'm sorry, I mumbled. I'm sorry, Ms. Lillian Jean, demanded Mr. Sims. Big Ma, I balked. Say it, child. I'm sorry, Miss Lillian Jean. When the words had been spoken, I turned and fled, crying into the back of the wagon. No day in all my life had ever been as cruel as this one. And that